Mark, 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 Mark. Hey everybody, I am back to continue my thoughts on this little book right here, the D&D Player's Handbook. Last time I covered the races and the classes in about 2 hours worth of video, broken up into 2 parts. Hopefully this one will be a little shorter, at least this part. What I'm going to be covering this time are the chapters 4, 5, and 6, which cover personality and background, equipment, and customization options. And the emphasis there is on options, because everything in that chapter is optional as far as putting together a character. The first thing I should probably say here is you'll probably notice that I am recording in a different position this time. I'm looking over at the picture right now just to see what we're kind of looking at here, but I'm recording facing the computer screen this time. Hopefully the glare isn't too much of a problem. Let's see here. Well, now you still have the computer screen glare, so I don't know. Maybe we'll just leave that on. Okay, let's start over again. Hello everybody, I'm back to review this little book right here, I'm back to continue my thoughts on it rather, the Player's Handbook for Dungeons & Dragons. Last time I covered the races and classes. This time I'm going to be covering chapters 4, 5, and 6, which cover personality and background, equipment, and customization options. Emphasis there is on options because everything in chapter 6 is optional. You'll notice I'm facing the computer screen this time because I have the glare on my glasses. I figured I would try this out, see how it kind of works out, and see if that's acceptable, because it did take quite a lot of setup to get into the point where I could record like I did last time, and I don't know if last time really worked out all that well, because you were basically like, the background was really bright, but I myself seemed rather dark. Anyway, moving on. First chapter we're talking about is personality and backgrounds. The first part of the chapter basically just covers it covers various aspects and character details like height, weight, gender, etc. Covers information about your alignment. They have gone back to the system of 9 alignments. Technically there's a 10th, there's an unaligned, but that's only for non-sentient creatures, so player characters will never have to use that. At least I don't think they can. I don't think any sentient creature can choose that alignment, but I'm not sure. Also covers the languages, which may or may not apply in terms of the game that you're playing. In a lot of cases in my games, they really don't. And it also covers backgrounds and it covers inspiration. I'll talk about inspiration first. Inspiration is basically a system that they have built in to the rules where you can sort of give people rewards for good role-playing. It's probably not something I'd use because I think it risks making it into a competition, especially because, and I think it also risks introducing a problem in terms of putting things on the DM, which is something I'll get to when I talk about the combat, which is one of the things that I sort of worry about with this system, even though on the whole I think I really like it. And most of what I like is from probably these parts that I've read. Because the classes and races didn't impress me too awful much, as you might have gathered from the first video. But these parts I was interested in. This was probably one of my favorite chapters, was the personality and backgrounds, because I really like the backgrounds. What the backgrounds do are They're essentially these choices that you make for your character in terms of your character's origin. So it's sort of something that ties into your backstory, kind of like character traits or flaws, but it's larger than that. Because what it gives you is it gives you, let's see, it gives you proficiencies with skills and usually with a type of tool. Tools are usually associated with skills. That's pretty much it, actually, for the proficiencies. It also may give you languages, and it usually gives you equipment. In addition, it typically gives you a feature of some kind. Usually it has to do with some contact or ally that you would have, although not always. But usually that's where they go with them. Like the Acolyte, for instance, the first one they has as a feature, Shelter of the Faithful. As an Acolyte, you command the respect of those who share your faith, and you can perform the religious ceremonies of your deity. You and your adventuring companions can expect to receive free healing and care at a temple, shrine, or other established presence of your faith, though you must provide any material components needed for spells. Those who share your religion will support you, but only you, at a modest lifestyle. Lifestyles is something we'll get to with the equipment. You might also have ties to a specific temple dedicated to your chosen deity or pantheon, and you have a residence there. This could be the temple where you used to serve if you remain on good terms with it, or a temple where you have found a new home. While near your temple, you can call upon the priest for assistance, provided the assistance you ask for is not hazardous and you remain in good standing with your temple. So that's the Acolytes feature. Just to kind of give you an idea of how each background sort of works, I'll go ahead and cover the other things they get. They get skill proficiencies in Insight and Religion. They get to choose 2 languages of their choice that they learn in addition to anything they get from races or classes. This is all in addition to that. And you get for equipment a holy symbol, a prayer book or prayer wheel, 5 sticks of incense, vestments, a set of common clothes, and a belt pouch containing 15 gold pieces. The other thing that backgrounds give you are personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws. These are basically entirely role-playing oriented, and they are suggested, so they are optional rather than necessarily something that's mandatory. Essentially, they're there to kind of the whole point of the background is to give you ideas to help you develop a character, which can be very, very helpful. But it's also it's something that you might not necessarily need, but they have enough variety in the backgrounds that I think everybody can kind of find one that they would gravitate towards, and you can get the bonus equipment out of it. If you don't want the story-related stuff, the role-playing related stuff, you don't have to take it. But the backgrounds give you that extra thing that you can get, and they give you the ability to kind of think about your character through the backgrounds and kind of develop them that way. That's the thing I really appreciate about them. They have the Acolyte, which is the religious one. They have a Charlatan, which is basically a con man. Criminal, which is like anything from a burglar to a pickpocket to even just like a thug. They have the Entertainer, which is basically any sort of performing artist. They have the Folk Hero, which is kind of like a... It seems almost like a noble savage, really. Because the idea is that you... The whole idea behind the Folk Hero is that you come from simple origins, but you sort of have this greater destiny beyond that. Another thing about the backgrounds is a lot of them have variants. Like, for instance, the Criminal has the Spy variant. The Entertainer has the Gladiator variant. I think those might actually be 2 of the few that have variants, so there might not actually be as many as I might have been suggesting there. But moving on, you have guild artisans, which is basically somebody who would be part of they have a very wide variance. It's kind of hard to quantify it all into one thing, but like maybe you're a smith, maybe you're a brewer. There's all kinds of things, and it basically makes you a member of the guild of whatever that is, like the Glassblowers Guild. I just picked something randomly off the list because they have a D20 list that you roll on. Of course, you can just pick from that too, but as with a lot of things like that, you have a randomized list option if you don't really know what you want to go with, and you can roll if you want. And there's a variant of the artisan, which is a guild merchant. There's the hermit, which is fairly self-explanatory, I guess. Sorry about that. Had to itch my head. There's the noble. Fairly self-explanatory, I would imagine. The outlander. The outlander is sort of like a tribesman or something like that. There's various things that it can be. Sometimes it's tribesman, sometimes it's just somebody who lives out in the wilderness and isn't necessarily a wild man or woman, but they're just a wild they live out there, out from civilization. And you have sages, learned people essentially. Sailors, pretty self-explanatory. You have a variant of the sailor, which is the pirate. You have the soldier. Again, that should be self-explanatory. And the urchin, which is basically somebody who was orphaned and lived on the street. So as you can see, there's a pretty wide variety of options. So it's difficult not to be able to find one of those that ties into your character, at least in some way. So I really like the background system, and I think between that, the races, and the classes, you end up with some really good tools to put together your character. I may not agree with some of the archetype type things that they have in the class system, but between those three things, it seems like they have a pretty good character system in place. And of course you have equipment. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because there's not a whole lot to it. One new thing is they now have an Electrum coin, which is sort of like a lower version of the Platinum coin. It's basically valued at a half a gold piece. And the way that they explain it is that, like the Platinum coins, those are usually found in more ancient treasure hoards. They're not commonly seen. So, I thought that was really cool. And then you have armor, light, medium, heavy. Pretty simple. One of the things about armor, and one of the things that I kind of have an issue with, is spellcasting in armor. I don't know if I covered this in the racing class, but just to kind of go over it again. You can spellcast in any kind of armor as long as you are proficient with it. If you wear armor and are not proficient, I think you outright can't cast in it, but I don't know exactly because it doesn't really specify. I don't really like that, because I just think if you're a spellcaster, you shouldn't be able to cast in armor. The end, unless you're a cleric. They kind of did away with the divine arcane split here, so in doing so, they kind of got rid of the whole reason that clerics are able to cast in medium armor, but wizards can't cast in armor at all. So they got rid of arcane spell failure, essentially. I don't know if I would want to bring arcane spell failure back, or just, play with it and see how it goes. That's kind of how I feel about a lot of the rules at this point. Like with the things I didn't like from the class section, is just, at this point, maybe just play with it, see how it works. If it really is just like broken, then you change it then. But I mean, any changes that you make, I kind of worry about the balance of it, because I think they did make an effort to make things fairly balanced. So that's the armor. The other thing they did is... that if you try to be stealthy in heavier forms of armor, you take disadvantage on your stealth rolls rather than an armor check penalty. So there's no more armor check penalties. You just... stealth is the only thing that can be potentially affected, because you have disadvantage if you wear something that's too heavy. Weapons, you have simple and martial. They don't have exotic anymore. Which, the reason they don't have exotic is because they don't have feats mandatorily anymore, which I'll get to in Chapter 6. Weapons are fairly simple. I don't like the fact that there's no more bastard swords, because I always liked bastard swords. But other than that, I mean, the goal seems to be kind of to simplify things. So if you want to get rid of exotic weapons, I guess that's fine. And then they just cover equipment. Really not much to say there. They have potions of healing listed as part of the equipment, so they just have sort of a standard default potion of healing now. Not a whole lot going on there. They have tools. What tools are they are basically kits, supplies, and various things that you use to either perform a task or that help you in some way. And you get proficiency with tools through various classes, races, and backgrounds. Like, for instance, I believe that you get proficiency with thieves' tools through the criminal background, or the rogue class, or however you might get it. Who knows? But that's basically what they do, and they give you... Basically what the kits and tools do is they allow you to add your proficiency bonus to checks that you make. So, maybe that's helpful, maybe it's not. Kind of depends on, most times if you're proficient with a tool, you're generally going to have a pretty good check there. And if you get to add your proficiency bonus, that makes it all the better. Mounts and vehicles, fairly straightforward. Expenses, basically covers like your lifestyle. And before in the Acolyte background, it mentioned a modest lifestyle. That cost you 1 gold piece per day, so you would basically pay 30 a month to maintain that lifestyle. And what it does is it basically covers where you live, what you eat day to day, your life expenses, your day-to-day expenses. That's essentially what it is. And then this also covers various services. And then the last thing they have is a section on trinkets, which is kind of a cool little thing. You basically roll a D100, or you just look over the table and pick something. And the trinkets are essentially these just little objects that would have some significance to your character. They don't really confer any bonuses or anything. It's entirely a role-playing thing. So, what basically the trinkets are there for is to give you something, is to give you an item that you can kind of tie to your character as a thing of import in their backstory. So, it's basically another role-playing assistance device. Then you have your customization options. Chapter 6. This is all stuff that is optional and is up to the DM in terms of whether or not you get to use it. The first system is multi-classing. And multi-classing basically seems to be fairly simple. The only real thing that you need as far as multi-classing goes is you need to have a certain minimum as far as an ability score goes. And then you get... and I think you get basically all of their proficiency bonuses. Okay, you don't get all their proficiency bonuses. They actually limit them a little bit. Like, if you don't start out as a fighter, fighters get heavy armor to start with, as do paladins. If you multi-class into either of those classes, which you can multi-class into Paladin in this, you only get up to medium armor. So they limit you in that way. Because if not, then it would just be, you could just get your strength high enough as a wizard, multi-class into Fighter, and boom, you have heavy armor and you have no limitations on your casting. So it's not quite that broken, but... I'm still not sure how I'd really handle that, whether I just kind of let it play as is and see how it works, or whether I would sort of raise a larger issue with that. Still kind of thinking that one over, and I'm not really going to get a chance to find out whether or not how I would handle it until, of course, I get to play the system. Also covers any multi-class spells you get, stuff like that. It's pretty simple. Feats. Feats are handled a lot differently in this. You no longer pick feats as part of normal character progression, as I said before. Basically how feats work is this. When your class gives you the ability to improve one of your ability scores, you can instead choose to trade that ability score increase in, and it's usually an increase by 1, I believe. You can choose to trade that ability score increase in for a feat choice. And the feats are a lot more powerful in this system than they would have been in 3.5 or Pathfinder. Because you're no longer choosing them every other level. Basically, you get 5 ability score increases. So you're trading one of those 5 ability score increases in for a feat. Because of that, the feats are a lot more powerful. Like, for instance, you actually can't charge by default, it looks like. You have to take a feat for that. So that's interesting. They have like a 2-weapon fighting feat called Dual Wielder, which basically gives you 2-weapon defense. It takes away. It basically gives you +1 to AC while dual wielding. It lets you dual wield weapons that are not light. Normally, you just have to dual wield light weapons only. And it gives you quick draw, essentially. And they got a toughness, like a super version of toughness, of course. They have something that boosts your attacks with heavy or two-handed weapons. They have some armor bonuses. They have all kinds of stuff, really. And some of the feats actually give you score increases on their own. So, basically, they would make you more powerful. And I don't know if I might just take those out and just let characters pick ability scores anyway. If I were to use it in a game, just because I don't know if I like the trading aspect. I don't know if I'd rather just have them take the feats and then they're a little stronger than they normally would be. Or maybe a lot stronger, who knows. But that's how the feat system works, and that's pretty much the end of part 1. It pretty much ends with those feats there. And you get a lot of different bonuses for those feats. They're actually really cool. There's a lot of them here that are pretty damn good. Like, let me just read one of them here. Tough. Your hit point maximum increases by an amount equal to twice your level when you gain this feat. Whenever you gain a level thereafter, your hit point maximum increases by an additional 2 points. So it's basically toughness times 2. Toughness being the feat from Pathfinder /3.5. And they're basically all around that kind of power where they're a lot stronger than the traditional 3.5 /Pathfinder feats. But that's pretty much the first part. That's the first part of the book.